Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I think we're going to get started. Everybody's shushing now, sorry. Thank you and welcome. I'm Shelley Butler. I'm one of the library team leaders here and also one of the editors of Cairns and some other things, but this is a library bookstall event and we're so happy you're here. And we'll get things rolling. I want to introduce our host for the evening, the illustrious Kim Chapman, who is a poet in his own right.
Thanks, Shelley. So that was a signal for me to walk up here. So here I am. First of all, I want to tell you about a couple of little items you're going to hear in this poem. Two poems, actually. I'm going to use the word Elodea. That's the genus name of a plant that's very common in our lakes called waterweed. The other thing I'm going to tell you about is, first of all, how many of you have ever skated on a lake? Oh my God. Okay, I know I am in Minnesota. Geez, if you did that even in North Carolina, no way. Okay, so you probably all know what it takes. You've got to have a real cold spell. You need that 4 inches. And then there can't be any rain or snow, right? Because that wrecks the surface. But if you have those conditions, it is absolutely magical. You can go for miles on these lakes. So that, believe it or not, was the inspiration for this first poem I'm going to read called Skating on Thin Ice. Now, I've always wanted to use a line that I bet nearly everyone in this room knows. It's from William Butler Yeats' poem, Second Coming. You probably even seen it in a New Yorker article recently. It goes like this: the best lack all conviction while the worst are full of passionate intensity. I think some of you have heard that. So that's the quote in this poem. All right, skating on thin ice. At the lakeside, you pull on the cold skate and lace it up. And then the other one. You are ready to go, a man balanced on 2 blades atop the ice that seems to hold. You push away, right foot, then left, driving the ship of your body forward across the stubbornness of water, turn to easy, glossy surface. The pondweed and Elodea, still alive, smeared in a kaleidoscope of green shades and shapes inches below, like a forest seen from above, pressed up against a giant sheet of glass. You are safe, certainly. No groans from the glassy pavement, no surprising cracklings or booms, no sign of weakness in the thing that separates the smooth pull of your oars from the unknown depths below. It seems a dream, this walking on water, impossible in nearly every other place and time. And as the miles and years spool out behind, your tether to that original genius shore now gone, there is only the stroke on stroke on stroke, only the curve of the coursing through, past decades and the trials of history making, and shh, and shh, and shh, the only sound of each day passing and then forgotten. And maybe the thought now comes that what was thought so solid, holding 2 centuries and more against all the proofs of history, must fail eventually, as all forms do. That fissures in the body politic and a certain eager forgetfulness or machinations towards undoing by the rest, with a slight tipping of the climatic scale from plenty to never quite enough. And this pleasant monotony of living in a republic breaks. The surface fractures and the whole collapses in an instant. The plunge to cold universal harm, as certain as the ice you skate on now. That didn't It started out so pleasantly. What happened? Unreal. Do not read that one at bedtime. That's all I can say. It'll keep you up. All right. Second poem, last poem. We had a gift for a friend of ours. It wasn't quite enough. And I said, oh, gee, I got to do something else. So I wrote him this poem. And there's only one term that you need to know. I'm going to use the word leader. Leader in this poem means the fastest growing uppermost branch of a conifer or an evergreen. The leader is the thing that determines how straight that tree is going to be. And so you always want to manage the leader. If there's a side branch trying to get ahead of it, you want to cut that branch off. So that's the leader. Okay, the planting. Thank you for that. Sorry, Mark. Okay, the planting. They are what foresters call thrifty, the saplings of white pine and arborvitae that grow in the filtered sun beneath a canopy of aspen, spruce, and fir. Their thrift is in the narrow upward stretch to a gap of light, a window to surviving, despite the green crowds, the rocks, the bad soil. Thrift is their single-minded pursuit of light. We all should be like that, mission-driven, focused on outcomes, attuned to nuance of time and place, so as to make our every effort count. For what else is there but effort in this life? We try, we fail, or if we succeed, it's just a lucky recovery after a near fatal misstep. The fates are nothing if not insistent on this. And then there's you, checking the saplings, trimming the hazel, training the leaders, single-mindedly undoing the greed and carelessness of a generation with no profit to yourself, or maybe a little profit, in the sense that what you do will outlast you by 200 years, when, standing where you stand now, a young man admires the strength and beauty of your forest. I think you liked that poem. And now I'm going to introduce Ruth Kirkland, who will be reading from a piece that she calls To Sail a Ship. Welcome, Ruth. Oh, thank you.
So this is To Sail a Ship. This is a bit of a memoir. The house where I spent my first 18 years of life was in the San Fernando Valley, a suburb of Los Angeles called North Hollywood. In 1942, when my parents moved to the valley, it was made up of many small communities, which within 10 years would grow into one continuous sprawl of bedrooms and shopping centers. Before marrying, my parents had lived and worked in Hollywood on the other side of the hill from the valley. And when they moved into their new home, they were teased by their friends for moving to the country. Back then, each valley community was connected by newly paved roads that cut through orange groves. There were no freeways yet to connect downtown with the valley, and my father would complain bitterly about the half-hour commute he had to make each day through the pass to Hollywood. This complaining was among his many woes and filled his life, and even after the freeway connection was built, he still bemoaned the commute. I was born a year after they moved from Hollywood, and grew up learning the labyrinth of roads that ran through the valley. And then, as they were built, the freeways that would crisscross the valley and the megalopolis called Los Angeles. The house that my parents moved into cost $7,000 and was built on a small city lot in a new housing tract with little landscaping except for 2 scrawny sycamore trees in the front yard. Even though Southern California is known to have scant rainfall, one of these trees flourished into a tall shade canopy. I always suspected that it was being fed by an underground broken sprinkler pipe. As I grew, the tree grew, and I loved to sit under its shade and hang from a lower branch. The house had 2 bedrooms and 1 bath, and a floor heater in one corner of the living room on which I could stand on cold mornings. By the time I was 4 years old, I had 2 younger brothers. My brother Pat and I were stacked up in bunk beds in a small room called the den. My mother and father slept in one bedroom, along with my baby brother Mike, who slept in a crib in the corner. My mother's father, Papa, had his 14-year-old grandson, my cousin Trace, claimed the other bedroom. Other occupants of the house included my Uncle Russell, my mother's youngest brother, and my Aunt Renee, who, along with her newborn baby son, was mourning the death of her husband killed in the war. And then there was Mary, a family friend and a transplant from Oklahoma, who lived with our family while she awaited the return of her soldier husband. I'm not sure where they all slept, though I remember a fold-out couch in the living room and a cot in the corner of the den where my brother and I slept. 11 people lived together in this house for my first 5 years, and my life and this sometimes meant chaos. In the backyard of the new house, my grandfather and uncle poured a large cement square floor to serve as a patio, and my father planted a lemon tree next to it. The tree, known as Daddy's tree, produced juicy, sour lemons year-round for the 18 years I lived in that house. My mother strung a clothesline between 2 poles set in concrete in the back of the yard, and my uncle put up some swings for my brothers and me to play on. We burned trash in a homemade incinerator in the corner of the yard until the city ordinance banned open burning and curb pickups were instigated. A large detached garage was set towards the back corner of the lot, and behind it they built a shed to hold extra tools and building materials. This was my grandfather's workshop. With his carpenter skills, he built pieces of furniture for the house. I remember our kitchen table in a corner next to the window, the sunshine pouring in, and my mother taking her morning coffee with Mary. I remember a child's high chair both my brothers and I used until it fell apart. I remember a kitchen stool and looking through the slats of a baby crib where I took my naps. These are all my grandfather's handiwork. Behind the garage and the tool shed, there was a small space where extra lumber was stacked. When I was about 9, during one of my exploration adventures, I discovered a small niche, 2 feet by 3 feet wide, behind the stacked lumber and the neighbor's cinder block fence. If I climbed along the top of the 6-foot-high fence, I could drop down into a space and be completely hidden from sight. The ground was just dirt and muddy when it rained, but it had the sweet smell of lumber, and it was my secret place. This space became my hideout, where I would go when my feelings were hurt or I just wanted to disappear for a while. When I was there and I heard my mother calling, I wouldn't answer. I didn't want her or anyone to know where I was hidden. I would wait until she had gone and then climb over a neighbor's fence and come home from the other side of the yard. No one ever knew about my hideout except for a cat who from time to time would visit me. The garage didn't have a door and served more as an open workroom than a place to park a car. On Saturday afternoons, I would often find my dad sitting next to the workbench, sipping his whiskey and listening to Dodger baseball games on the radio. The other things that made the garage different from other neighborhood garages was that it had a room in the attic. My Uncle Russell lived with us and the house was crowded, so he decided to build himself a room. He lowered the ceiling into the garage and then built stairs that led up into the eaves, creating a room with one dormer window and built into the side of the roof. The ceiling of this upstairs room slanted up the roof line, which meant my 6'3" uncle couldn't stand up straight except in the middle of the room. It was a musty, smelly place furnished with a bed, a hand-braided rug my mother had made, a dresser, and a bookshelf. Most of the books were not of interest to me, Boy Scout manuals, Hardy Boy adventures, and such, but one of them was the first book I ever read completely through, and it emboldened my life. I discovered it one afternoon when I had snuck into my uncle's room when he was not around. It was entitled To Sail a Ship and was about a lonely girl teaching herself to sail. I never learned to sail, but from that story, I learned that I could do anything because, like the heroine in the book, I could read. And like her, I could always find a book or another person to give me instructions. When I read this book, I didn't realize, but this concept of personal power would serve me for the rest of my life. Are my memories of my childhood home just the stage for my early life? Or did my home environment shape my life? When folks speak of feeling at home someplace, where does it mean there's a comfortable connection to something familiar? Or does it mean an emotional investment they make in a place when they connect their life with the environment? For me, the answer is all of the above. I haven't lived in California for over 25 years, and yet every time I visit, I make time to drive by my house and smile at the old sycamore tree there in the front yard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruth. That was a marvelous reminiscence of childhood. Up next, John Early is going to read two poems for us, A Dad Like That and One of the Sleeping Dogs. Can't wait.
I'm good now. Whoa. I am always amazed when the parent-child relationship goes well. And this is a poem about that relationship going well between a father and his son. He retired from building houses and played more golf, but noticed that the course was different now. Fairways groomed less well, greens patchy, ball washers towelless and dry. He volunteered for maintenance. He finishes grooming the trap on number 5. Last week's rain compacted the sand, so he hoed it, wheeled in more, trimmed the grass along its edges, raked it smooth. From back up the fairway, his father's words come rolling like a well-struck iron. Oh, but that's fine, son. You've done a fine job. A father dead 20 years, whose legacy echoes like the memory of a long putt hold. His father taught him the game with a quiet voice. Grip it this way, son. Study how I swing. Finishing the lessons with, oh, that's a fine shot, son. That's just a fine, good shot. Deepening his praise with repetition. They played together for 40 years. The son whittled his handicap to 5, spurred by, oh, but that was a fine 9-iron, son, just a fine shot. Lifting words that drove him to be better. He believed that he had the finest father in the world. You've struck it well, son. What a shot. Yes. How does one come to be blessed this way? What does a score matter when you have a dad like that? He's the same age now as when the old man died. Of course, his back hurts, his hands, but he still plays once a week. Stranger on a changed course where players drive carts across the greens and no one replaces a divot. A heart infused with words of praise carried him wherever the years led. Student, husband, father, builder. Today at his feet, the greatest sand trap in the history of the world. Oh, but that's fine work, son. That is just fine work. And this second one is a sonnet called One of the Sleeping Dogs. It's about a chance encounter, and as chance encounters bring memories, those memories can be good ones or not so good ones, or sometimes both. And this is a poem about that. The speaker here is an older person walking through his hometown, which he hasn't been to in a while, and he comes across and a movie theater that he used to go to in high school, like 50 years before. And his girlfriend worked in the theater, and he would drive down and pick her up on the weekends. And the theater's been closed for a very long time, but he's walking by and he discovers that it has been reopened. Our teenage theater, shuttered 30 years, reborn. Don't look inside, but then I do, and I see the unexpected lobby. Time now shorn of 50 years and bright as the new marquee. Ticket booths dark, The Graduate, the movie, The Graduate inside. You are shutting down the warm concession stand, ignorant as I, how youth has always lied. You lifted up a smile, raised an eager hand. My first car idled at the curb. Tinny AM bands, my elbow out the window. The world knew. Anticipation of your pliant body in my hands, how life made sense, how love grew. So long ago, those days when we were sure. Sleep, I said, too late, and wondered where you were. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. I loved your first poem. That was just marvelous. Made me think of my own dad. Thank you. Next up, Shelley Butler, reading from a work in progress, a work of fiction, soon to be a major motion picture nearby. Okay, good. And this is titled Jess Gets Blessed.
And welcome to everyone on Zoom. Forgive me for not saying that earlier. Jess woke up early enough to notice the orange light coming through the wood slatted blinds and thought briefly about getting up for the sunrise, but quickly dismissed the idea in favor of more sleep. By the time she got up, there was no trace of the sun. She lived on the largest freshwater lake in the world, but just now, if you didn't know it was there, you wouldn't know it was there. It was mid-September, and as if God were playing some cruel joke on Jess, it was snowing lightly, the kind of snow that discriminates about what it will cling to and what it will melt upon. The weeds that defied the riprap held some patches of snow in their embrace. The buds on the shrubs looked neither wet nor snowy, just gray, as if they'd gone back to sleep and would require reawakening. From the cabin, which sat 20 feet or so back from the shoreline and 20 feet or so above the lake, Jess again looked for the water. It was as if one giant whitish cloud hovered over the lake as far as one could see, the sky and the lake indistinguishable from each other. No horizon, no land across the lake, just white touching down on white. Daddy used to call it the big drink of water. but reminded her often that Gitchigami was the original Anishinaabe name before some French guy thought he had the right to rename it, and some British guy anglicized the French thing to Superior. The behavior of a large group of bobbing black dots on the water suddenly fascinated her. She knew them to be common loons, though there was nothing common about them that she could observe. Like conducting a sociological study, she watched as smaller groups of 4 or 5 swam near and around each other, but stayed close enough to the large group so as to be part of it. It was impossible to make an accurate count of them as they were fishing. Just as 1 or 2 dove down into the lake, another one here or there popped back up. They drifted closer to the shore before splitting up into 2 groups and heading in different directions. One loon from the littlest tribe kept its distance, close enough to see and follow the group, but separate just the same. An outlier from the large group was even braver, swimming closer to the shore as its tribe huddled together and swam farther and farther out until Jess could no longer see them. Some say that loons tend to be solitary, but that was not her observation this morning. She watched the small tribe loner rejoin the group, but worried about the outlier that came close enough in so that she could see the ripples in its wake. She identified with the solitary creature. She didn't like crowds, preferred to be by herself, and was known to wander off in search of what people around her wondered. What was it thinking? They're not having much luck out there. Maybe I can find better fishing here. This looks familiar. Maybe I found the nest where I was born. Why is that huge creature, Jess, in the large box watching me? The loons were gone now too, or at least out of sight because the waves were choppier. She much preferred the large and loud crashing waves to placid waters, but just now she missed the loons and wondered where they could be. Perhaps I've been living alone too long, Jess said out loud, as though there was something wrong with a 22-year-old spending her adult life in solitude in an 800 square foot cabin, worrying about loons. Feeling the need to see another human being, she went to the grocery store. Hi, how's your day going? He asked when she walked up to the corn bin, looking her straight in the eye as if that were something that Jess was used to and wouldn't find uncomfortable. The man looked fit and healthy, just shy of burly, clean cut, tanned, maybe attractive, she couldn't decide, and sure of himself, but also like he could own a MAGA hat. Fine, you, she answered, looking back down at the task at hand, pulling the husks down on a cob just enough to see if the corn inside was tender or if it had been left on the stalk too long and developed big tough kernels. He was doing the same thing, only gathering a dozen or more ears. Just wondered if people did this everywhere or if it was a socially acceptable thing to do in Minnesota only, where sweet corn season was better than Christmas and everyone approached selecting, cooking, and eating it religiously. Yeah, good. I played a round of golf this morning. The wife's out of town with the girlfriends and the guys are coming over for tonight for a cookout. I'm blessed to have a lady who comes in and cleans. Do you remember that TV show with the housekeeper named Alice? Like family, just said, though he didn't seem to have heard her. She's just like family, except I pay her salary. But then again, I pay everyone. The kid's allowance and the wife takes the rest. There's really not much left for me. Yeah, right, Jess said, like I believe that. Just then she realized she was smiling and smiling at him. Yeah, no, I have everything I could want. I'm very blessed. It's good to count your blessings. She wasn't sure if he heard her say that either, but as she had her 3 perfect ears of corn in hand, she said, have a good day, and turned away. God bless you, he said. Again, he seemed unaware that this was not a normal thing for Jess. No one had said that to her since great uncle Otto died when she was 7. She looked at him again to make sure that he had blessed her, and he smiled in confirmation. As if he had performed laying on of hands, This man, whose highest aspiration that day was corn, burgers, and beer, as if she'd had a foretaste of glory divine, Jess left Zupp's since 1916 food market, humming Grandma's favorite old time hymn.
Thank you very much, Shelley. The dialogue in that was marvelous. It felt like real people. And now we have a treat. Kathleen Bartholomew is going to play us a little song. This is an arrangement by George Shearing, jazz composer, of our favorite. All of us love this song, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. So sit back and enjoy. That was truly magical. Thank you so much. I'd like to invite Carol Mankey up to the stage. Now, this is a work of prose. Is that right? Carol, is this from a book you're working on or
No, this isn't from a book. This is just a short essay.
a short essay?
Yeah.
Carol Mankey, everybody, reading a short essay called Bunch of Cows.
Bunch of cows. Now I realize that you're supposed to say herd of cows, but this comes from when I was a kid. I was terrified that one thing that would happen tonight is that I would drop all the sheets of paper and never be able to get them back into the same order. So I did this. Now I think I can get through it. My grandpa Cranston had clear blue eyes and thin white hair. He never had much to say, but sometimes you could read his thoughts in those blue eyes, unless you were a boneheaded adolescent. When my sisters, cousins, and I would visit his farm in central Minnesota, he would take us down a dusty road and up a grassy hill to see his white faces, his Herefords. Viewing cattle was not the high point of my visit, but at my mother's urging, I patiently, though not enthusiastically, went along. So there we were, a bunch of suburban kids staring at some brown and white cows who dutifully stared back at us. All I wanted was to get back to the Trixie Belden novel I was reading. But we couldn't go back to the farm until my youngest sister had to go potty. Why does Grandpa have to show us his cows every time we come to the farm? I wondered to my mother. Because he's proud of them, she would invariably reply. Proud of a bunch of cows? Didn't make sense to me. Years later, when I went to college, my best friend was a young woman from a ranch near Park River, North Dakota. Despite our geographic difference, we shared a lot of things, like growing up in churches and being opposed to the Vietnam War. Julie, in fact, had been to the Democratic Convention in Chicago in 1968 and participated in anti-war demonstrations there. She became a lifelong friend whose genuine concern for people has always touched me. We were almost inseparable that first year of college. More years later, Julie and I were both mothers of little boys. Julie also had a daughter in grade school. It was late in March, and with my two and my husband, we were visiting the farm she shared with her husband, Pete, near Hoople, which isn't very far from Park River in Northeast North Dakota. She suggested visiting her father's place where her father and brother were calving. Meanwhile, Pete and Terry, my husband, were target shooting. Pete, a gun collector, intended to show city slicker Terry, who actually was from Montana, his prowess at shooting. Little did he know that Terry, at that time a TV news photographer, had a very sharp eye and had won junior NRA contests back when the NRA was into training youth to handle guns safely. Pete was blown away, though not literally, at Terry's marksmanship. But Pete was a good sport. He bragged about Terry to his friends for years afterward. Back to calving. My curiosity won out over my anticipation of a lot of gooey, cold mud. But there are a few things little boys like more than mud, and I knew they would love a trip to the ranch. I knew nothing about calving, but I found out pretty quickly why ranchers wear long leatherish sleeves when they confront a difficult birth, especially with a first-time mother. I also found out how preciously clumsy new calves are when they first attempt to stand, sort of like a drunk trying to gain sea legs on a storm-pitched ship. I hadn't realized that Julie's father and brother, Jay and Randy, slept in the barn throughout calving season. That was how much they cared about their cows. And I remembered my grandpa's bright blue eyes when he showed his grandchildren his cattle. By then, Grandpa was gone. In the last years of his life, those bright blue eyes faded to pale blue as he discovered that his two sons, my uncles, didn't want to inherit the farm that he had kept solvent through the Great Depression. I wished I could tell him that I finally understood something of how he felt about his cows. My little boys, it seemed, were far more interested in the barn cat and her kittens when we visited Julie's father's ranch. They weren't as interested in the calves who were closer to their own size and couldn't be picked up and hauled around. Something the mother cat didn't approve of. I'm still embarrassed that I could not see how passionately proud my grandpa was of his Herefords. Julie, I think, came by her compassion for people and other creatures, partly from her family's care and concern for the animals they kept. I genuinely admired Julie's love for all creatures. My own nature is more cynical as a retired jaded journalist.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Carol. Up next, John Wilson will be reading two poems, Listen and Visiting the Great Buddha of Kamakura. John, as you know, is strongly influenced by philosophies and religions of the Indian subcontinent.
Well, thank you for being here so I can share these words with you. Whatever words are, whatever they can bring to your hearts. So just listen with an open heart. Invocation. Oh, you goddesses who pour your love upon all beings, making the earth bright in our hearts. To you we offer our ceaseless affection, our attention, and our awareness. From high above the mountain, the eternal watches in deepest peace. Your music takes us back to the paradise of peace, where we emerged into the wide world, light shining on each flowering child. It is that cherishing, that worship at the altar of the eternal, bringing us into the presence of the infinite that removes our ignorance. Listen, O you lords and ladies of Byzantium, citizens of the eternal here and now, I address that inner presence, that awareness which was born of freedom, liberated and clear. We are at one with one another, beyond all class, caste, rank, having set all ignorance behind as we move further into this love and light. The goddess blesses each of us with space and time and energy and light. All that we see and hear, all that draws us inward and or outward, the centripetal and centrifugal expressions of desire wake us, shake us, break us, as we sit in the safety of your loving silence. Now, we were lucky enough to go to Japan in March, visiting the great Buddha of Kamakura. Buddhas gather around the world to celebrate cherry blossoms in the full moonlight. From so many times and places, they arrive into this here and now, called to gather by love. They radiate their peaceful light through the cracks in time's continuity. I hear your call and come to sit in your sweet presence. O Lord of interbeing awareness, walking through our hearts and days, we acknowledge your presence among us, within us, throughout all space and time and beyond. We find your interconnecting consciousness when we contemplate the cherry blossoms, when we flow with the motion of the moving sea, when every breath flows both to you and from you. for you are the whole of being, limitless and free, showing us how we are meant to be. Inner friend, you are so available to us, so able to cut through whatever forgetfulness we allow to obscure our awareness. Each night we release further habits of hesitancy, freeing our inner selves to accept more freely your freedom and love, which you dance in and offer to us endlessly. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I made the mistake of assuming that this was Indian subcontinent oriented. It was actually Eastern Asian. Thank you. Up next, Lenny Seams, here to read some prose titled Searching for Dr. Schimmelpfennig, 67 years later. Did you find him? Well, we'll find out. We'll find out. Okay. Dr. Schimmelpfennig.
Slightly German. I'm going to echo what John said about thanking all of you for being here in person and all of you on Zoom self-selecting to join us. Gives me strength to be up here, knowing you're out there. Searching for Dr. Schimmelpfennig 67 years later. I can remember my doctors at Children's Hospital, maybe because I was there for a long time. They were Dr. Longtie, Dr. Bowtie, Dr. Crewcut, and Dr. Goodlooking. I was often sick as a child. My parents brought me to different doctors and specialists over the years. None of them found any reason for my ongoing illness. When I was 5 years old, I was a patient at Children's Hospital in Minneapolis. The doctors there removed my appendix and performed exploratory surgery on me. Again, nothing. With growing concern, my parents took me to see Dr. Schimmelpfennig. He asked them, "What is your home environment?" This is what they told him. My parents owned a bar in Cumberland, Wisconsin. They lived in one of the 2-bedroom apartments above the bar. My mom and dad had their room. My older sister had her room. My dad lost his mother in childbirth with his youngest sister. Never really knowing his mother, on the day of his father-in-law's funeral, he said to his mother-in-law, "Sophie, you'll always have a home with us." He had never consulted my mom before offering this invitation. My grandmother sold her home and moved in with our family. My sister lost her bedroom at the age of 3. My mother was grieving the loss of her father, living with her mother by default, and 1 month pregnant with me. After I was born, I shared my grandmother's room and her double bed when I was older. My grandmother had been through a nervous breakdown, electric shock treatments, and was depressed. She had a habit of favoring one child in each family, and she chose me in our family. Like her husband, I had red hair, and this had a lot to do with her strong attachment to me. We were inseparable. Her friends were pretty much my only friends. I served them tea at pretend tea parties, and she would push me in my stroller all over town. She was my second mother, and I loved her fiercely. I'm empathic to the point that we would sit in our respective rocking chairs, put our hands over our lower abdomens, and sit and rub them back and forth as we rocked and rocked. I took her medicine at the same time she did, although a smaller amount. It was yellow liquid, and I bet I could pick it out in a taste lineup to this day. Dr. Schimmelpfennig said one thing after he heard the story: "Get her out of that room. Don't come back to see me until you do." To my parents' credit, they made changes. They redid the layout of the apartments, allowing us to have 3 bedrooms. I do not remember Dr. Schimmelpfennig, only hearing his name and the instructions he gave my parents. With COVID isolation and no work in over 2 years, I've been going through all the piles of paper that I've collected over the years. I had saved an article from the Star Tribune, November 16th, 2013, that mentioned a woman named Diane Schimmelfinnig. Finally, at age 72, I saw his name in writing and knew how to spell it. Excited with my new find, I knew I needed to follow up on this lead, my only lead, and try to find my doctor. My search began on June 16th. I called for Diane and learned from her daughter that they were not related to Dr. Schimmelfinnig. My dad was from Chaska and my parents had lived in Shakopee before moving to Cumberland, so I started with Shakopee City Hall and Scott County Government Center. I needed a complete name and date of birth for these two places, and I had neither. Next, I tried Scott County Historical Society, where I could do a surname search if I came into their facility and did it myself, or they could do it for me and not charge if they found nothing. They would charge $15 an hour for their search, which would be capped out at 1 hour before they contacted me to see if I wanted to pursue any further. It took 2 to 3 weeks to search requests. I agreed to their conditions and waited patiently. They sent his obituary and an article about the hospitals and boards on which he served. Trying my luck online, I typed in Schimmelfinnig and came up with quite a few possibilities, the best of which was a woman named Krista Schimmelfinnig. She was not related either, but knew of a park named after him in Chaska. When I Googled Schimmelfinnig Park, the first article written pointed me to a second article which mentioned Chaska Historical Society. Bingo. Barb at the Historical Society knew of him, that he had practiced in Chaska, and that Tracy, another staff person, would know if there were any living relatives. Barb sent Tracy a message. Finally, I was given his information. George Theodore Schimmelfinnig, born March 4th, 1903, died March 13th, 1990. Daughter, Catherine. I was given her mailing address in Chaska. Armed with her mailing address, I sent Catherine a 2-page handwritten letter about how, after seeing several doctors, her dad was the only one that actually helped me get well. I pulled out all the stops and told her the Chaska address where my dad's family had lived, my aunt's names, their occupations, the names of my cousins who might be more her age. This time I waited less patiently for a reply because I felt so close. After 1 month, I called Barb again and was given the phone number of the facility where the daughter lived. The staff there told me that Catherine was in assisted living and quite capable of responding to a letter or a phone call. Would I like her direct phone number? I could barely believe my good fortune. Catherine was a delight. Though 91, she had a lovely, youthful laugh and was very upbeat. She received my letter and was sorry she had not replied. She had meant to, and her life got carried away. She was in a wheelchair, not able to get out. Her son was in the background, helping her with words. She would love to meet me. Please come out to Chaska so we can talk, she said. Her dad died over 30 years ago and she couldn't believe it. Life keeps going on, doesn't it? And she thanked me. We met on September 16th, exactly 3 months after my search began. Her son, David, and my daughter, Willie, joined us. We were all together for 2 hours. The time flew by. We covered a gamut of topics as if we'd always been close friends. Catherine's family and my dad's family lived across the alley and 1 house down from each other. One piece of the puzzle fell into place, how my parents found him in the first place. My Aunt Helen was an excellent cook and a baker, and she brought loaves of bread to Catherine's home. Catherine remembered my Aunt Louise, taught at the Lutheran school, was an excellent seamstress. She knew my cousins. Our families were close. Dr. Schimmelfinnig was chief of staff at Idle Hospital in Minneapolis, had a practice in Chaska, and was on staff at the hospital in Shakopee. Chaska did not have a hospital. Being a doctor truly was his vocation and calling. He cared for patients into his 80s out of his house, and he made house calls on New Year's Eve. He was empathic with patients. He had a dry sense of humor and was a vaudeville kind of guy. He went out of his way to get children to laugh when he worked in pediatrics, showing pictures of totally unrelated subjects or objects to detract the kids from what he was doing. Dr. Schimmelfinnig loved a deal. One day he saw a 4-foot stuffed dog on sale that he got for his grandson, David, who had stepped away. As Grandpa sat in a waiting area with the dog in the seat next to him, people gathered around. When David came back and saw the huge crowd around Grandpa, he thought something bad had happened. Turned out, all the people were Dr. Schimmelpfennig's patients. One man had his pants pulled down and was showing Grandpa the scar on his upper leg. Do you remember this, Doc? My daughter and Catherine's grandson asked me, why did you contact her? My heart has been needing to express deep gratitude to all those who cared for me and helped shape me to who I have become. Once I saw his name in print, everything in me focused on my finding a living relative to whom I could offer my profound thanks. I can't know what my path might have been if my parents had never gotten his counsel. He was holistic in his approach to health and well-being, and he saw me at a very critical time in my life. His wisdom helped me to know what I know about energy and the transference of energy from spending so much time with my grandmother, and about the critical part environment played in family dynamics and medical practices. With my daughter as witness and a part of this gathering, meeting his relatives, crying and laughing with them, finding our less than 6 degrees of connection, taking pictures, and honoring Dr. Schimmelpfennig by thanking them in person, a huge weight was lifted from my heart. While I hugged Catherine, her grandson told my daughter Willie that Catherine was in hospice. My handwritten letter to her was there in her living room, and he said how much it had meant to her to receive it at this time. There are no coincidences. Catherine passed on January 15th, exactly 4 months after we met.
Thank you so much. Life is profound and a circle. And last, we have our very own Barbara Hubbard with a musical interlude, looks like at any rate, from the guitar. And you're going to sing 2 songs, right? Dear Someone and Mother, Carry Me Home. And we were talking a little bit before the event started, and you were inspired watching Joni Mitchell get an award. And you thought, well, she can do it, I can do it. And so here you are. And one of the songs was a marvelous waltz.
That's right.
So if anybody wants to get up and waltz to that one, I really encourage you to do it.
Thank you, Heidi. Yes, Joni Mitchell. Did anybody see the Gershwin Awards of Joni Mitchell? It was fabulous. And so it did inspire me to like, okay, I'm going to do this. So the first song is called Dear Someone, and it's a Gillian Welsh song. And some of you might remember from years ago that Leon Dunkley and I used to sing this together. I wanna go all over the world and start living free. I know that there's somebody who is waiting for me. I'll build a boat steady and true as soon as it's done. I'm gonna sail along on a dream of my dear someone. One little star smiling tonight knows where you are. Stay, little star, steady and bright, to guide me afar. Rush the wind all over the deep, for now I've become And take me into the arms of my dear someone. Hurry and take me straight into the arms of my dear someone. I wish Leon were here to sing that with me. I'm going to ask you to sing along on this one with me. It's a song I learned at a women's music festival in 1978. I have no idea who it was that I learned it from. It's called Mother Carry Me Home. And the chorus goes like this. Mother, carry me home. Mother, carry me home. Carry me on the songs that you sing, the songs that I've tried hard to find. Carry me on the songs as a child I was raised on, then left behind. Oh, mother, carry me home. Think you can do that?
Wow. Okay. We'll do our best.
For the years I tried hard to know you. Old memories fade as they do. But it's the sweet song of gladness you sang every morning. Lives on between me and you. Oh, mother, carry me home. Mother, carry me home. Carry me home. The songs that you sing, the songs that I tried hard to find. Carry me home. The songs as a child I was raised on, then left behind. Oh, mother, carry me home. In a dream, I saw an old woman. She's wise, so wise it is. On her head was an old hat with bright colored flowers, and in her arms an endless loaf of bread. Oh, mother, carry me home. Mother, carry me home. Yeah, the songs that you sing, the songs that try to come. Yeah, the songs as a child I was raised on, then left behind. mine. Oh, mother, carry on. Mother, carry mother, carry on.
Thank you so much, Barb. You have a lovely voice. So intermission time. We get 10 minutes to stuff our faces. There's lots of food over there, plenty of food. Christoph, you're looking at me strangely. You can eat food over there. There's plenty of food, lots of things to drink, more alcohol. And please come back here no later than 22 past the hour. I want you in your seats because we're going to get started.
I hear a bird chirping up in the sky. I like to be free like that, spread my wings so high. I see the river flowing, water running by. I like to be that river, see what I might find. I feel the wind blowing, slowly changing time. I like to be that wind that swirling shapes the sky. I smell the flowers blooming, opening for spring. I like to be those flowers open to everything. I feel the seasons change, the leaves, the snow, the sun. I like to be those seasons made up and undone. I taste the living, the seeds that grow within. I'd like to be there, the home where life begins. I see the water rising, reaching its inlet. I like to be there, I know it goes. I know the sun sets the wind begins to wake. I like to be the silence as the morning wakes. I feel the slowly changing time. I like to be the wind that swirls shape the sky. I smell the flowers blooming for spring. I like to be these flowers open to everything. Drizzle of the rain, like a memory it falls, soft and warm, coming on my friend. It's distracted and confused. My thoughts are many miles away. They lie with you when you're asleep. Kiss you when you start the day. As I watch the drops of rain, weave their weary paths and I know that I am so go.
What wondrous love is this, oh my soul, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this that calls the Lord of bliss to bear the dreadful curse for my soul, for my soul. To bear the dreadful curse for my soul. What wondrous love is this, oh my soul, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this that calls the Lord of bliss to bear the dreadful curse for my soul, for my soul. To bear the dreadful curse for my soul. When I was sinking down, sinking down, sinking down. When I was sinking down, sinking down. When I was sinking down beneath God's righteous frown, Christ laid aside his crown for my soul, for my soul. Christ laid aside his crown for my soul. And when from death I'm free, I'll sing on, I'll sing on. And when from death I'm free, I'll sing on. And when from death I'm free, I'll sing a joyful be. And through eternity, I'll sing on, I'll sing on. And through eternity, I'll sing on. What wondrous love is this? So, so, sing, so, 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 sing, so, 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 sing, so. Oh.
Too late, I'm too tired to sleep. I called mother on the phone. She wasn't home. Street.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everyone. Could you start making your way back to your seats, please? So that we can move on to the next group of people. As the silence descends, those of us still at the food table begin to realize that they should go back to the table where they are sitting. Marvelous. Okay. So before we go on, I'd like to just ask Barb Hubbard to please stand up and come stand over here by me. Yeah, uh-oh. Well, we have one more special event coming up in May. Oh, wait a minute. I'm ahead of myself. You just keep staying right here. Stand right here. Sorry. I should have read this in advance. Just want to let you know that we have one more special event coming up in May, the book launch of Don Brunquell's new book of poetry on May 19th here at Unity. See the notice in today's program. Thank you also to the Library-Bookstall Team for sponsoring this event, and to the great volunteers, some of you seated, who make this all happen. Thank you. Heidi Bergholtz, thank you so much for making all of our microphones work. Also, all the staff who make it possible as well, staff of this church. And last but not least, do you realize this has been going on for 15 years? It's quite remarkable. Who was here 15 years ago? Wow. And the reason you were here 15 years ago is because you were one of the people who made this happen.
Do not forget Shelley Butler.
Shelley told me not to mention her name. So it was Shelley's idea. The story is, it was her idea. She said, I want to do a poetry reading, invite the congregation.
Yep.
And then someone said, no, you should just have an open house and have any, and then the first one was the ministers mostly.
Right. We had red checkered tablecloths.
You had red checkered tablecloths. What's with the blue ones? At any rate, it went off very well, but that was the only time all the ministers decided they wanted to put in the extra work to prepare for this. And so from that point on, it was all of us who were doing this. And I just want to remind everyone that everyone presenting here today, except for the musicians, I believe, except for the poem you're going to read, are showing you original works. They have not been, they are not from someone else. They are inspired by our own congregants here at Unity Church-Unitarian. And what I'm going to say now is we think of you as our fearless leader. You stewarded the library bookstall team in so many endeavors, including this one. And Barbara, we wanted to say thank you. And we're very grateful to you for everything that you've done for us over the years. And we know you're going to be retiring soon, which makes us all very sad. But in a token of our appreciation, we have a little orchid here. And my wife is very good with orchids, so I'm going to have her send you an email.
Ice cubes, right?
Well, she has her own techniques, but I'll.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, let's get back to the show. Suki Sun, Chuck Griggs, there they are. Violinist and a guitar player. They are going to sing Louisiana Fairy Tale, which was originally a Fats Waller tune. Is that correct?
Fats Waller made it popularized.
Ah,
And I think Shelley did something. But it was written by, the music was written by Haven Gillespie, and the lyrics by Mitchell Parrish and Fred Coots. But as you mentioned, it was originally popularized by Fats Waller, but it has been covered by many, many people. We found so many examples, slight variations poking around online, which makes it, but it's fun. It's a fun tune, and then this will be followed by a short poem, which is original work. Let's not trip myself here. The dew is hanging diamonds on the clover. The moon is listening to the nightingale. And while we're lost in dreams, the world around us seems like Louisiana fairy tale. The breeze is softly singing through the willows, as hand in hand we stroll along the trail. And love is at its height, enchanting us tonight, like Louisiana fairy tale. Is it real, this fascination? Are my dreams holding you fast? Are we here on this plantation? Or can this be heaven at last? Keep dreaming with your head upon my shoulder, and don't awaken till the stars grow pale. The world is at our feet, the picture is complete, like Louisiana fairy tale. Is it real, this fascination? Are my dreams holding you fast? Are we here on this plantation? Or can this be heaven at last? Keep dreaming with your head upon my shoulders, and don't awaken till the stars grow pale. The world is at our feet, the picture is complete, like Louisiana fairy tale. The world is at our feet, the picture is complete, like Louisiana fairy tale.
Okay, thank you very much. And we're gonna finish this performance with a poem I wrote. It's called Meditation Journal on April 13. Having to leave for work before I finish my meditation, you bid your farewell by nibbling, biting, kissing my left earlobe. With your lingering scent and heat, oh baby, how do you know today is so special? I will be wearing this silly earring you just gave to me with a silly smile all day.
Thank you, Suki and Chuck. Sarah Hoon. I'm sorry, Susan, spelled right there. You have a new book that you're working on. There it is. It's finished. And it's going to be published in the fall. October. It's called The Widow's Guide to Becoming a Handyman. A handyman, sorry.
Thank you. So this is my journey through concurrent grief and learning how to fix my farmhouse. And many of you have heard my story following the death of my husband. So I thought tonight I would share a story about when we met. This is the book alternates chapters of when we met at a beer festival in New Ulm, Minnesota, and the phone call when I was summoned to the Unitarian Church in Northfield where he died. Fear stealing some of my inhibition, I loudly sang along with the choir. I spotted him in the back row, swaying in time to the music. The youth choir members stood on the stage in direct sunlight and blazing heat. His mature beard raised the median age of the choir and broadened the definition of youth. They were singing Kornblumenblau, a German ode to the special blue of the cornflower. I knew that shade of blue so well, a muted blue with hints of lavender offset by the sharp orange of poppies that grew alongside the cornflowers in the ditches around Stuttgart. He was wearing sunglasses and a goofy straw hat, which I followed through the crowd following the concert. A careful hello and compliments for the choir performance led to a beer in the beer tent where a brass band blasted polkas and waltzes. Underneath the straw hat were eyes as blue as the cornflowers he had been singing about and reflected depth, generosity, and kindness. What? Ein yin and yang? He yelled over the oompa music. The dime-sized Chinese pendant that was a permanent fixture around my neck caught his eye. We felt an immediate connection over our shared philosophy of interconnectedness that the pendant symbolized. We sat close enough so that I could smell the sweet scent of sweat coming off his body. Möchtest du tanzen? He asked when a familiar waltz began. My chin snuggling into his collarbone, I fit perfectly into his arms. He was an experienced ballroom dancer. I had no expertise beyond the bear hug variety of American high school dances. We awkwardly danced to Kennst du die Pelle Rose. He swung his sunglasses on a red rope around to his back so that he could hold me tightly as we danced. Realizing my inexperience, he guided my steps with a firm hand on the blue floral Laura Ashley lookalike dress I had sewn for myself. His blue eyes smiled at my missteps. The air was hot and heavy, and it seemed there was no one else on the makeshift dance floor set up on the dirt of the fairgrounds. My breath shortened and heat rose along my face and down my neck. I fell in love with him during that dance. I had known him for less than 30 minutes. Klaus was visiting the United States for the first time and spoke almost no English. His host family, who lived a few houses down from my parents' home, did not speak German. Together, we went to festival events and tourist excursions in and around my hometown. I went to all of the performances of the choir and looked for the goofy straw hat and piercing blue eyes in the back row. He wasn't easy to pick out in the choir. Others loomed over him. His eyes were the most remarkable thing about him, not only for their beauty, but also for their expressiveness. It was as if they looked through me and sensed how separate and alone I had felt growing up. They were eyes that conveyed a ripple of intimacy and made me feel understood. It was as if his thoughts floated on the surface and wanted to be read. I anguished over the love I felt and the questions I had. The deep doubt I had in myself and the world around me prevented me from trusting that this could happen. I had never had a serious boyfriend and felt unlovable. I questioned my every move, my every thought. Could he love me too? Were the feelings reciprocal? I certainly did not believe that I would ever find someone to love me and someone to love in return. How could a relationship in which an ocean separated us ever work? Klaus had just ended a relationship with a woman from Hamburg on the other side of Germany. The relationship ended in Klaus's eyes because of the great distance that separated them. Did he reach up and stroke the nape of my neck that Sunday afternoon from the back of my dad's dark green Volkswagen Fastback on our way home from a picnic at Fort Ridgely? I couldn't be sure. We said goodbye that Sunday evening after the picnic. Holding my hand, he kissed me on the cheek and promised to write and send a cassette tape of the music sung by his choir. Only Mausi, the dachshund, was witness to his promise, and he was deaf. I waited and waited and waited for him to write. I passed the licensing exam and started my first job as a psychiatric nurse at the New Ulm Hospital. The long nights I worked gave me ample time to think about Klaus and wonder what he was doing. I asked myself if he was dating someone else and wondered if the promised letter from him was lost in the mail. He never wrote.
Oh, no. Okay, well, we're going to have to hear the next chapter next time, okay? Wow, what a downer. Beautiful prose, beautiful prose. I'm just amazed at the ability of all of us to conjure up these long ago memories, recreate dialogue and the mood. It's just amazing, isn't it? I'm amazed. And now we have Gary Mabbitt, poet, going to read two poems, Bridge and Extraterrestrials.
My mother was born on April 28th, 1923. So this would be her 100th birthday. So I should read something about my mother. I grew up in Ohio and eventually settled in Minnesota, for professional reasons. My parents migrated exactly the other way before I was born. Much later, when my mother entered the purgatory we call a nursing home, the real tragedy of life choices weighed heavily on me. Well, thanks for calling, my mother said. I have to go now. I'm in West Virginia, and I need to catch the ferry across the river. She handed me the phone and said, that was Jane. She's 94, you know, like it was Babe Ruth's batting average or something. Indeed, it was remarkable. But I resisted the urge to remind her that she was 91 herself. Mom and Jane were two of the last three original members of the Bridge Club that had met bi-weekly for over 60 years. As a child, I liked the days when my mother hosted bridge parties, since it meant leftover dessert and chocolates. It also meant a strange fragrance of cigarette smoke in the house that I had not yet learned was a bad thing. These gatherings were social events made for the exchange of news and views and recipes and garden tips, but they also included some black belt card playing. After the first trick was played, mental quantum calculations predicted the positions of various cards that were subsequently revealed experimentally. Rarely would X-ray vision have improved the results. Many strokes interrupted that. Mom's conversation flashed abruptly, like someone surfing television channels. On the business news, she explained where to find her broker's telephone number. Then suddenly it was an episode of Little House on the Prairie in which she announced she was alone in the woods and waiting for a buggy to take her home. Although I doubt she ever have ridden in a buggy, I knew she was telling the truth. Now for something completely different. This is called extraterrestrials. There is a common urban myth that pyramids and megaliths were made by visitors from outer space. Not only is that story odd and full of arguments that are flawed, it's insulting to the entire human race. Yes, billions of galaxies with billions of stars make odds of intelligence on planets like ours good, despite numerous limitations. Surely among all the orbiting rocks, there are places to please Goldilocks. But the issue of real estate is location. If they live too distant to commute, the prospect of aliens is moot, and visiting is out of the question. The light that reaches us today from the other side of the Milky Way left those stars 100,000 years ago. Since light moves much faster than matter can master, even 1 light year is a long way to go. So if Einstein is right about the speed of light and the limit it places on touring, beings from the next closest star are still situated too far, since a century-long ride is boring. But consider, if we might, speeding faster than light, we surely wouldn't chance it, for there's no time to evade a rock that's mislaid in one's path during the transit. The ancients deserve our respect for their shrewd intellect in their architectural endeavor. We've come to the conclusion that alien help is an illusion, and early people were just clever.
Marvelous, Gary. Thank you, thank you. That first piece was actually prose, wasn't it? Okay. And Kathy Oakley coming up. That'd be fine. Okay. So Kathy, I know you are a poet and you're going to read poetry.
I am. I've got two
Exclusively.
poems to share with you tonight. The first is based on the fact that for the last 30 years, my husband and I have a cabin in northern Minnesota, not far from the town of Deer River. And Deer River is located on the eastern edge of the Leech Lake Indian Reservation and is the tribal home of the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe. And because of that, we are lucky enough up there in our friends and neighbors who are either full Ojibwe or descent of Ojibwe. And this poem was written in admiration for the ways in which these friends, some of whose names are included in the poem, are living rich lives that unite both past and present. It's called Resilience, Deer River. In spite of broken treaties, Yankee land grabs for trees or minerals, forced boarding schools, unwelcomed bottles and bars, threats to clean water for wild rice, laws about spearing fish, prejudice and discrimination. In Deer River, the Ojibwe live and flourish. The high school teams are the warriors, and they are rightly named. At the grade school, all the kids are learning some Ojibwe. The important words, Buju, hello, Miigwech, thank you, Manomen, rice. The logo of Frontier Construction is a warrior's shield and feather. John Hughes owns a big lawn business, hunts and fishes in the fall, makes syrup in the spring. His GoPro owning daughter documents his skills. Ken Hull works at the paper mill, but walks a daily 5 miles in the woods, notwithstanding local bears, says only that the two-leggeds, not four-leggeds, are ever of any concern to him. El Donnell builds graceful cabins and carves a maple leaf or acorn into each door frame. At the laundromat, a cheerful grandma, her daughters and grandchildren chatter, play, and fold laundry together. And at the yearly Wild Rice Festival, the Ojibwe women dance in jingle dresses. The men are brilliant in feathers, drummers drum, and the bright-eyed children sing. Second poem is a bit on the lighter side. I think it was written after a weekend of watching too many episodes on PBS of Midsummer Murders, Grantchester, Poirot, Inspector Morse. It's called Watching British Television. Mostly mysteries, you see, with an occasional dish of royal family, all set in pretty villages with stacked stone walls, so picturesque, so full of bodies, stashed in cellars, slashed in fields, washed in wells, steeped in poison, shot by rifles, gored by crows or swords or arrows. Even in sunlight, wide green fields seem menacing. The foggy woods are definite no-go zones to me. Not to mention haunted colleges, churches streaming dusty sunlight, votive candles, troubled vicars. Afterwards, detectives may enjoy their friendly pint, but I have canceled any plans to land at Heathrow or tour the murderous English countryside.
Okay, that was brilliant, as the British would say. Good job. Oh, my goodness. Okay. Up next, Lisa Burke, The Godfather. Is this a prose thing or a poem thing?
Yeah, it's prose. It's a
It's
memoir,
prose.
a piece of memoir.
Okay, a piece of memoir called The Godfather.
I was 12 in 1972 when The Godfather came out. My brother was 13. My father was working for Chrysler International, traveling to North Africa and the Middle East, and we were living in Athens, Greece. He spent most of his time away from us, but now he was home for a few weeks. And the Mario Puzo book that had gripped him on the page, the most accurate portrayal of mafia life he had read, was on the big screen, and he was looking forward to seeing it. My mother had taken him to see a rescreening of Dr. Zhivago several years earlier on a double date with another American couple, Aunt Rini and Uncle Nelson, who were honorary family. My mother was a proud Russian, the child of parents who had escaped Russia during the revolution and created new lives in Iran. And Dr. Zhivago spoke directly to something in her DNA, and she reportedly wept through the film while my father shifted in his seat, sighed heavily, checked his watch, and wished he was anywhere but in that theater. Returning to our apartment where my brother and I had been left alone, the men headed straight for the bar. "I need a stiff drink after that ordeal," my father said, pouring scotch into 2 glasses. And Uncle Nelson forcefully agreed. "What kind of man sits around writing poetry in a frozen palace while his family needs him?" Dad asked disdainfully. My mother, wiping her eyes, accused the men of having no heart. The Godfather, now that was all about family. My mother hadn't read the book, but she knew enough about the story from my father's enthusiastic reviews. She wanted our family to share an experience we could all enjoy, and this is the one that presented itself. She decided my brother and I would come to the movie with them. It would be educational. There was no drinking age in Athens and no minimum age to buy cigarettes. My brother and I would freely drink and smoke our way through our high school years, but movies were rated much as they were in the US, and the parents of those under 18 on both sides of the Atlantic were cautioned against allowing their kids to see things like Sonny Corleone doing a bridesmaid up against the door of an upstairs bedroom in the opening scenes and getting machine gunned to death at a toll booth. Looking glamorous and elegant, knowing about fashion and beautiful things were very important to my mother. She had her hair and nails done every week at her salon by a tall, bleached blonde woman who called herself Josephine. I liked going to the salon with her and watching the activity and the lengths to which women went to make themselves look or feel beautiful. Many arrived carrying something to read while under the dryer in their cherished little green and gold plastic Harrods of London shopping bags. Mom is also rarely seen without makeup on, and she now set about using her artistry to make her 12-year-old daughter pass for at least 18. I remember feeling apprehensive, but also a bit intoxicated by her plan. I was petite for my age, skinny, flat-chested, and baby-faced. Mom applied shimmery blue eyeshadow and mascara, blush, and lipstick. She fluffed my hair up and tied a scarf around my head as she'd seen done in a fashion magazine. She put me in one of her padded bras and stuffed the cups with the foam insert she positioned in her bikini top that pushed her boobs together to create cleavage. Then she found a flowy top for me to wear. Getting my 13-year-old brother ready was less work. He wore his dress slacks and a button-down shirt under a blazer, and one of my father's ascots was stylishly tied at his throat. I think my mother carefully applied mascara to the fuzz on his upper lip, but I'm not sure about this. If my father had any misgivings about this scheme, he didn't say anything. When my mother made her mind up about something, there was no questioning her, and he had learned to pick his battles. Preparing to wait in line to buy tickets, my mother may have handed me a lit cigarette. Surely the woman behind the window in the ticket booth thought this crazy foreign lady and the children she had tried to disguise as young adults were a bizarre troupe. She silently slid 4 tickets towards us. If my mother, sitting beside me watching the enemies of the Corleones threatened, broken, and killed, ever questioned the wisdom of having brought her children to see the carnage in this movie, she never said anything about it. I recently read that the man who woke to a bloody, severed horse's head in his bed screaming was really screaming when the scene was filmed. In rehearsals, a fake head had been used, but Coppola had it swapped for a real one from a freshly slaughtered horse destined to become dog food. Did I scream? I don't remember, but I do remember the scene very well, of course, and many others. A man looked up from a massage table to see his executioners come crashing through the door for just a second before they shot his eye out. Another suddenly found his hand stabbed through, pinned to a bar with a large, vicious-looking knife. And then there were the scenes at the end that cut back and forth between the baptism in a Catholic church and the Corleones' adversaries being massacred. I called my brother recently. He's a good guy and was a good friend growing up in our eccentric mother's home. But now we only speak a few times a year. We created very different lives for ourselves as adults moving to the US for the first time. He's a Texan, a Republican, and a card-carrying member of the NRA who coaches shooting matches. We walk carefully around issues involving politics, but it's fun to reminisce with him. I asked him what he remembers about Mom trying to make us look older to go see The Godfather as a family. I don't remember that, he said. How is that possible? I asked him and told him what I just told you. Well, he said, laughing at the image of our mother handing me a lit cigarette, I do remember Mom taking us to see Cabaret. I'm pretty sure Dad was out of town. By the time she was done making you up, you looked like you would fit right in at the club with Liza Minnelli. I remember seeing Cabaret, but couldn't have told you it came out the same year The Godfather did. 1972 was indeed an educational year.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lisa. I wish you hadn't reminded me about those scenes in The Godfather. Okay, another musical interlude, and this is the final presentation of the evening. Kathleen will be playing the piano, and we are going to sing along with her. Turn, turn, turn on the back of the program. Everyone has a program. You're going to play it through one time so we know the pitch and the meter, and then we're going to jump in. All right, go ahead, Kathleen. Wonderful. I'm just grateful to be here with you all, and I'm sure we all have a similar. So that's the end. Mike is there. So I'm just wishing everyone a good night and talking about how beautiful that song was and that we all got to sing it together. And we'll all see you again next year, same time, same station, right here, Café Unity. All right. Woo-hoo.